it's Dr. Games, and I wanted to talk to you today about how to do an acrylic design on a t-shirt with heat set medium. So you see these awesome t-shirts at times with all kinds of cool designs. The thing is that you can do this at home yourself, and it's actually not that hard. The key to it is, and I use the golden version of it, although there are certainly other companies that sell the same thing. But in this particular case, it's golden acrylic, and it's the Heat Set fabric painting medium. And this is used at a 50-50. It's a 50-50 mixture with the paint. And so one of the things I've discovered as a best practice, couple things. One is, you'll notice that I have this plastic bag underneath, and I just use my ironing board as a painting surface. And what I do is I start off with, and again, we're not talking about super expensive things here. I start off with a basic white acrylic, right? And then I essentially cut it in half, and I'm using just golden acrylic primer and extender, which adds a little bit of shininess to it. So my original mixture that I put down on the t-shirt is 50% of the golden heat medium, and then a quarter extender and a quarter white. Now you might ask, why am I going to do that? Because what I've discovered over time is that, and you can see that I've just painted a circle on here. What I've discovered over time is that if you do this first, I'm going to let this dry. It's still, I don't want to demonstrate to you, but it's still wet. I'm going to hang it up here in a minute. And then I'm going to actually iron this when it's done. And this creates a canvas so that when I do the next set of paint, it doesn't all soak in. I've done probably about a dozen t-shirts now. And the first ones I just painted right on the t-shirt. And that's not a great strategy, I'm just gonna tell you right now. Because it blends with the color, you get inconsistencies, etc. So this is gonna allow me to start off with a good canvas. And it's going to take the color at this point, and the paints that I use after this are going to go on in a richer, fuller, more consistent way. But anyway, this is step one, and I'll join you again when I start doing the second part of this. Alrighty, and it's Dr. Games, and we're about to go to the next part of this now. This circle that I made out of the mix of the extender, the white paint, and the heat setting acrylic is all dry now. We're relatively dry. I mean, it's probably a little damp, but it's dry enough. I mean, the other thing is, and I can't emphasize this enough, when you do art projects, don't be going for perfection. You're not a machine assembly line. You're doing something from the heart, and that means that little imperfections shouldn't bother people. So what do we need for this part? You get the shirt. I've got an ironing board that this is on. I have a standard iron, no steam. I'm going to say that again, no steam, and the highest setting, which is typically something like linen cotton. And you're going to need this paper. Sometimes they call it parchment paper. Why? Because you're going to put this between the design and the iron, because otherwise the acrylic is really a plastic material, so it will end up melting. The iron will end up melting and getting a mess. So you got to have parchment paper between the iron and it, and it's not going to melt on the parchment paper. It's not going to stick. For whatever reason, this is all designed in such a way that it's about perfect. And I'm just going to iron it here, and then we're going to be good to go. Now, something else I would point out with this ironing piece too is I now have it on the iron. It's flat on the iron. I don't have a big thick pad underneath this. It's just a cover. And why? Because you want it to be as flat, and you need to put some pressure on this to be able to execute the set. So you wanna press hard, and you wanna linger. So this is going to take you probably 3 to 5 minutes of continuous pressure, and this should be too hot to handle by the time it's all set. And you need to do a thorough job when you're doing this. Thorough job, because if you don't get a good set, it'll wash out. Okay. I'm gonna cut it off here because I'm just repeating this for, again, probably 5 minutes altogether so that it sets, and then I will rejoin you when I do the next bit on this. Okay, I'm getting ready to put on the next coat here. This is dry, it feels smooth, and that's good. So it's now a nice solid background to it. Again, a couple of things. It's back on the ironing board, which I'm using as an easel in a way. And underneath of this, I just have a regular old garbage bag because I don't want to get all this stuff underneath. Now, here's a trick I also learned in the past. I've got this well-loved piece of cardstock, 110-pound cardstock, that I'm going to put underneath between the bag and the design there, and it's actually not quite big enough, I guess. So what I really need for this particular one is a slightly larger piece. In the past I've made smaller designs. I might be able to get away with it in this case too, because what I have here is a stencil, and I guess I could center it'll be fine. So because I'm not going to go all the way to the edges here. That'll just kind of remain in the background as a way of also contrasting. But I used my brother's scan and cut to come up with this very cool, this is a 9mm, so pretty thick piece of stencil. And I'll be back in a minute, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use this. And the other thing I found is I had been doing what they call positive. In other words, you're filling in something all with color. But I'm going to use a trick that our Japanese and Chinese friends and Korean friends use a lot, which is negative space, and it actually ends up being a kind of a cooler design. So I'll show you that in a second. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about color choice, because this is something else I've learned as I've got into creating these t-shirts. So back in a minute. Okay, so now what I've prepared here, or not quite prepared yet, is I'm going to do an orange, kind of a tangerine color, and I've got about equal parts of a pure red, a pure yellow, and a white. So it's going to be a light orange. Typically I do this design with a green and a fluorescent blue, but that would just be blinding. It would be blinding. Absolutely blinding with this pink shirt. So we're going to do this, and this color is this particular tangerine color is going to be a nice, even it'll be a little bright on here, but it will be pleasant. It'll be a pleasant look. And then we'll make the inner design, which I'll bring out in a second here. Well, it'll be after this dries, so it'll be moments for you. It'll be several hours for me, because the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for this to dry, probably take 4 or 5 hours, and then I'm going to iron it again, so that's good, and then I'll do the inside design. So back in a second with the actual painting so you can see how it works. So just midway through the process, so one of the things I did was I realized that the kind of tangerine color that I was making probably wasn't quite enough of a contrast with the pink. So I added a little more red. So now we've kind of got what I would call a dusty rose. Make sure that the acrylic paint is thoroughly mixed before you add the GAC 900 to it. And you can see that I'm making a mess. So I'm going to clean this up. The good news is because it's not set, it's easy to clean off with water. Alrighty, so now the GAC 900 is thoroughly mixed in. You can see where I cleaned up my little bit of mess earlier. You don't have to wear gloves to do this part, but because it's absolutely non-toxic. You probably shouldn't drink it, but it wouldn't hurt you if you did, most likely. Got to make sure that the paper is kind of lined up as far as that's going to go, because I don't want to get this all over. Well, I got the bag underneath, but I want to make sure it's flat. So I'm going to hold this in place, and then just with a flat brush, I'm going to make sure I go all the way around this, and I'm holding it down because I want to make sure that it's consistent. Gingerly pick up this template, and we're going to do it in such a way it slops as little as possible. And you can see already what the design is kind of going to look like. So I'm going to come back and finish this out. I'm going to clean up my little bit of mess here, and then I'll show you what it looks like once I've got the rest more or less painted in. Alrighty, so you can see the design now. It's not perfect. It's all by hand, but what I just tried to do, and of course the outer circle is not perfect either, but I just tried to be kind of sort of close to what that outer circle looked like. And I'm going to add just a little bit of ornamentation to the outside of this. Alrighty, so now you'll see that I just have a craft brush, really. This is not anything fancy. And I'm just going to add a little bit of ornamentation on the outside to make it something different than a perfect circle. You don't want it to be too thick, so that's the other thing, because otherwise it'll take forever to dry. Now, you can use a hair dryer on this, and I've done that at times, although, well, actually there's no downside to doing that, I guess, but it's just that it's time consuming, and if you're like me, you got other things you're doing. So I'm gonna let this dry. Just take a hanger and put it down. So that's kind of neat looking. Kind of an interesting design. Let me just make sure it's kind of sort of even here. And then I'll make sure anywhere that it's too thick, I'm gonna smooth that out a little bit. Not really changing the color at all, but so the next time you're gonna see me will be once this is dry. Hi, it's Dr. Games, and I'm here with the final step. So you can see that since last we spoke, I've put a design on here, and hopefully you can tell what the silhouette is in the middle. Again, it's not perfect. It doesn't look like a machine did it. It's handmade, and you can tell it's handmade, and it's a very nice color combination. I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to go ahead and finish it out. It dried overnight, although I think you're still going to get some tacky on it. But that is the way life is. So here we go. We're going to You can see it was still a little wet because you see some steam coming off the top. But anyway, it was good enough. It was good enough to get it all done. So I want to talk about color combinations just a little bit. And there's this. I want to make sure I don't burn the book up. There's this wonderful book called Color Harmony for Artists, and I'm gonna put a link to its Amazon page in the down in the comments. And but I love this book, and if you've ever had a fine art course, it doesn't have things that you've never ever seen before. But if you haven't, and if you're like me, by the way, I've never had a fine art course. I mean, aside from when I was in high school, I guess we had to take one art appreciation course, which was really just an extra study period. That was many years ago. So this particular combination we used is called an analogous color scheme. And it says it's pleasing the eye because they're a combination of colors that are next to each other. Little contrast. So we went from kind of a purple over to this orange color with pink in the middle. And you can see absolutely, and why did I pick that color combination? And this goes through other things like complementary, tetradic, and this is the one you typically see, the triadic. You usually see these kind of color combinations. And they do different kinds of things, right? But I didn't, in this particular case, and the rest of the book just to show you, it's got all kinds of different color combinations that seem to work well together from a limited palette. So anyway, big fan of this book. But yeah, this is a complementary color scheme. And what I wanted to do, again, is subdued it a little bit. Originally, the purple I was going to use in here was quite a neon purple, but this is designed to be soothing and calm and kind of fun. So I didn't want anything that was too jarring. I will show you another color combination, which is a shirt that I love and I wear all the time. And you can tell that this is also a complementary. This is also a complementary color combination. And there's this one. And this one I did a little bit differently. You can see that I didn't put a background this time on it. Otherwise you'd see a little bit of a lighter blue in the background. And you can tell a couple things. So the color is not as deep. And also, the one thing that I am able to do when I do it this way, although you could try a technique like this as well, you'd have to make a bigger circle, is notice that I faded the color out at the edges, which is something you can't do. But same kind of thing though. You got a green to a aqua in between to the blue and background. It's same thing. It's analogous color combination. And those, honestly, those seem to work best. So I will show you one more item that I'm finishing up today, just as a teaser. So just a second, I'll be back. And here we have another project that I did, also in analogous colors. And I used that same deep, rich burgundy color. And in this particular case, it also has some other vinyl that's been cut. So if you want me to, and I'll move it so you can see the whole thing. If you want me to do a video on how to use either the Brothers Scan and Cut or the Cray Cut, at least the techniques of it. I have a Brothers, I don't have the Cray Cut or the Cricut. But I can show you some tricks that I've learned with putting vinyl things on clothing cutouts. And with that, I very much appreciate watching the video, and please think about subscribing. And please do check out the websites in the comments below, and I'll look forward to hearing from you and hopefully seeing some new fans. Thank you very much.